Guys, I think it's healthy to question, why do I believe what I believe? Is this really all true? Does that ever cross your mind? Like, am I just believing this stuff just because I've always believed it? Like, but is this really true? Is God really out there? And when those questions come, what answers do you come up with for yourself? What is it that pulls you back to a solid foundation in Jesus Christ? And so, if we're going to question the existence of God and who his character is, the most significant approach really is to tackle the person of Jesus and to take a look at him, because really everything hinges on Jesus. The entire Old Testament is building up to Jesus and points towards Jesus. Every single story, every single passage in the Old Testament ultimately is about Jesus. And then Jesus comes, and now everything in the New Testament is built on the foundation of him. It all hinges on Jesus. And so really, we can't have just an impartial view of Jesus. We have to have a black or white view of Jesus. In other words, either Jesus was the greatest deceiver of all time, and by that I mean he convinced people to follow him to receive life and eternal life and to place all their faith in him and what he was going to do. And either that was a lie and he was just deceiving people, or he actually is who he claimed to be. And so what we want to do this morning, very quickly, is I want to look at some of the claims of Jesus, because when you look at Jesus and what he said about himself, you have to draw a line in the sand. And you either have to be on one side of the line or one on the other. Either one, you have to say, this guy is purely crazy and wicked and evil, or you have to say, he is who he claimed to be. We don't really have any alternative, and you'll see that as we start looking at some of the things that he said. For those of you who are figuring this stuff all out, this is great. Because this is an opportunity for you to start saying, okay, I have to start taking Jesus seriously. What am I going to do with Jesus? For those of you who are already convinced, and you've already bought into the idea of Jesus as who he is, who he claims to be, my guess is, though, you still struggle with it. You still struggle to remember who he claimed to be, or you struggle to trust it. And that brings some stuff into your life. It brings anxiety and fears and worries into your life, because there's certain things about Jesus you've forgotten or you've just neglected, and it has an impact on you. And so what we want to do is look at these. I'm going to hit 7 of the I am passages in the book of John. So we're going to cruise through this quickly. But if at the end any of you have any questions, if we have some time, I'd like to open up if you have any questions about any of the passages. So the first one is in John 6:35, where Jesus claims to be the bread of life. And as you'll notice, there's going to be the 7 ideas up here on the table, just so you have a visual picture. Jesus claims, he said this, I am the bread of life. No one who comes to me will ever be hungry. No one who believes in me will ever be thirsty again. A little bit farther down in verse 51, he said, I am the living bread that came down from heaven. So remember this, Jesus is saying here, I was in heaven, guys, and I came down from heaven. I just wasn't a baby that was born. I was actually pre-existent in heaven, and I came down from heaven. And he says, if anyone eats of this bread, he will live forever. The bread that I will give for the life of the world is my flesh. Well, out of curiosity, has anyone here ever fasted for at least three or more days? Man, a few of you have. Good. For those of you who have, what are you starting to feel like by the 3rd day? Man, your mind starts playing tricks on you, doesn't it? Your mind is going to come up with every conceivable idea to convince you to eat something. And it's funny because you say, okay, well, I think I fasted long enough. You know, at the point of what I'm, like you might have had a predetermined, I'm going to go 5 days or 7 days, some even 40 days. But by day 3, your mind starts playing games on you, trying to convince you to eat because your body thinks it's starving to death. And your body saying, you need to eat now. And it's going to do everything it can to get you to eat. What Jesus tells us, he says, guys, you're starving for life. You are so thirsty for life. And because you've been so thirsty and you've been starving, you've been chasing after anything your mind can think of that might give you just a bit of a taste of life. The problem is, Jesus is also going to tell us, you've been chasing some of the wrong things. The things that you think are going to give you life that you've been pursuing after, it just hasn't done it. It hasn't worked. And so you're still just as desperate, and you're still just as hungry, still just as thirsty. He told the woman at the well, if you remember that story, she had a whole bunch of husbands, was now a living guy, and Jesus was looking at her saying, this lady is so thirsty for life. And Jesus said, I can give you some water that will quench that thirst. In this context, he's saying to the disciples, guys, I'm the bread. I'm the most basic, essential thing you need for life. And if you just eat me, if you feast on me, if you embrace me, I'm able to actually address those hunger issues that have been distorting your life. Things that you've been just wasting your time, wasting your money, chasing after things, and realizing you're no further ahead. He says, yeah, because I'm the only one that can satisfy that. And so Jesus comes and says, the answer to your life is nothing in this life. The answer to your life is me. And if you feast on me, you will never be hungry again. And, oh, by the way, you'll live forever. Okay, kind of a challenging words that he's just thrown out there. By the way, after he said these words, many of the disciples abandoned him. They just walked away because he really camped out on eat my flesh, drink my blood sort of analogy. And he was talking spiritually. They were thinking literally. Ooh, this is kind of gross. We're out of here. The disciples, though, they said, no, we're going to stick around because Jesus, you have the words of life. And so the claim here is that Jesus says, and after each passage we're going to hit the claim, Jesus is claiming, guys, I'm the sustenance for life. I'm everything you need for life and for eternal life. The next passage is John 8:12. And Jesus says, I am the light of the world. Now, bonus points. Can anyone tell me what feast was happening when Jesus said those words? Oh, very good. Wow, bonus points for Kyle over there. Feast of Booths or the Feast of Tabernacles. Oh, is that because you got the cheat sermon notes over there? Oh, okay. Good. All right, way to go. There were 7 feasts that God commanded the Israelites to celebrate. One of them celebrated their journey through the wilderness and his provision while they're going through the wilderness. And so they'd build little booths and little tents, and they'd live in them for the week. And this was a very powerful, this was called the feast. You could miss some of the other feasts, but you didn't want to miss this feast. It was one of the greatest feasts. And at the end of the feast, it was 7 days, they would light these lamps in the temple in Jerusalem. The lamps would be approximately about 75 feet tall. And there would be 4 branches on them. So just picture in Jerusalem, 75-foot tall pillars, 4 of them around the temple, with the lights on top. And because the temple was built on a hill, one rabbi said there wasn't a backyard in all of Jerusalem where the light didn't cast a shadow. Like the light just shone everywhere in every property, every household in Jerusalem. And what these lights represented for the Israelites was, one, the glory of God. Remember, as they traveled through the wilderness, they followed the pillar of fire at night and the cloud of smoke during the day. And whenever it went and it stopped, they would set up the tabernacle. And then either that pillar smoke or the pillar of fire would come over the tabernacle and settle on it, and it was the glory of God, this heavy weight Shekinah glory of God that would settle on the tabernacle. And the Jews were now constantly looking forward to a time in the future when God would restore his glory to Israel, where his presence would come and radiate and bring truth and life, and they were looking forward to this time. So these lights were sort of a picture to the Israel nation of hope, of the glory and the presence of God that would be in their midst again. And it's at this moment, on this last night of the feast, when Jesus, in the temple, underneath one of these grand pillars of light, he says these words, I am the light of Israel. No, he says, I'm the light of the world. Anyone who follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Jesus is essentially saying, guys, everything you've been looking for Israel, I'm the answer to that for the whole world. I'm bringing you the glory and the presence of God in me. And so the glory and the presence of God is here in your midst through me, and I will teach you everything you need to know about life. I will show you the way. I bring clarity where there's darkness. And so if you're walking with me and I'm giving you that clarity, then you don't have to worry about stumbling in the darkness anymore. In other words, I can show you how to live the right godly way in this world, so you don't just keep stumbling, wondering, how do I live in this world? How do I approach life? He says, I can show you the way. So really, the claim here, Jesus' claim, is the hope of God's presence and clarity. Jesus is the presence of God, and he brings clarity about how to walk with him in this world. Again, some pretty bold statements. Next passage is in John 10:9, and where Jesus says, I am the gate. In the front is a little baby gate. That's the best I could come up with. I am the gate. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will come in and out and find pasture. A thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. I have come so that they may have life and have it in abundance. So what Jesus is talking about here, he's comparing the people of God to a bunch of sheep. And he says, you know what? My sheep are in my sheep pen. And the gate is the only way into the sheep pen, the only legitimate way into the sheep pen. And so if you want to get into the sheep pen, if you want to be part of the community of God, he says, the way is through me. If anyone's trying to get into the community of God by some other means, he is not of us. He is not with God. He is actually a thief that's actually coming to destroy what's inside the pen. He's a thief and destroyer. But he says, but I, as the gate, I'm here to give life to my flock and to give it abundantly. We live in a world that says, there's lots of different approaches to God. There's lots of different ways to God. And they say, we really need to be tolerant about that. The problem is God's not overly tolerant about that. God is not tolerant about false approaches to him, about ways that people say are going to bring me to him, but they actually veer us away from him, because God is all about us and him together. And God says, guys, there's only one way to me that I've provided for you, and so you need to come through the way that I provided. There aren't other ways. If there were, hey, great, but there aren't. There's only one way, and the one way is through Jesus. And that's why Jesus is the gate. And so the struggle for us is, am I really just thinking Jesus, or am I thinking religion? And I think even for us, it's sometimes a tension. Do you actually have a relationship with Jesus, or do you just have a religious belief system that includes Jesus? I think the danger for each one of us is, even every day, this is a daily battle, even for me, it's easy to get into the routine and rut of religiosity, even if it's Christian religiosity. We go through the motions, we do all the right things, we don't do all the bad things, but it has nothing to do with Jesus. And what Jesus is saying, guys, you just can't approach God through religiosity. You approach a relationship with God through the person of Jesus Christ. And so really it's a question like, man, even this past week, has my life been about Jesus? Did Jesus really have any role in my past week? Did I have ongoing conversation with him? Or did I just sort of ignore him? If I went through a week of just completely ignoring my wife and we just happened to live together, that's not going to go so well. And if that gets sustained over months and months and years, then we really don't have a relationship. We're just coexisting together. And sometimes I think our danger is that we coexist with Jesus, but we're not necessarily living the Christ-centered, the Christ-filled, the Christ-abundant life. So where Jesus says, those who are my sheep, who know my voice, I give them full, abundant life. So chances are, if you are sitting here today and you're thinking, oh, I don't think I could characterize my life as the full, abundant life, it's because you've been looking at your circumstances and you've been relying on your circumstances or other people to give you a full, abundant life. And the problem is none of them can. And you'll constantly be disappointed and frustrated. And Jesus says, no, no, guys, I'm the one who gives full, abundant life. Not a system of beliefs, not you just by being good, not by you just hoping you'll make it. It comes through Jesus. And so the claim here of Jesus is that he is the access to God's community. He is the access to the life that God has for us. And then Jesus ramps it up a little bit more. He says, not only am I the gate, I'm actually the shepherd. Listen to what he says in John 10, verse 14. He says, I am the good shepherd. And that's what the little sheep is here for. He says, I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me. And we're just not talking intellectual knowledge. And again, this is a danger. Sometimes we have an intellectual knowledge about Jesus. But my question is for you, in this past week, did you have an experiential knowledge of Jesus? Did you do life with Jesus this past week? Or did you just have a knowledge about Jesus this past week? Which world are you camping in? And he goes on, he says this, just as the Father knows me and I know the Father, I lay down my life for the sheep. But I have other sheep that are not of this sheep pen. I must bring them in also, and they will listen to my voice. There will be one flock, one shepherd. Shepherding is kind of a personal thing. It's when you're out in the field with the sheep, you might be out there for weeks at a time, months at a time. It's a 24/7 job. You get to know your sheep well. You get to know their quirky personalities. And what God is essentially saying is, I know you well, and I know all your quirky personalities. And yet he says, but I care for you. You know, a good shepherd is going to protect and provide for the sheep. An excellent shepherd, an unbelievable shepherd, is one that's willing to die for the sheep. If you were just on your own as a sheep, sheep are kind of stupid. They wouldn't last too long. They really wouldn't survive. They'd wander off places, fall off a cliff, fall into a rushing river, whatever it is. Not too bright. They would either be devoured or they would eventually just starve. They would not survive. And so what the shepherd does is he comes in and he protects the sheep from threats, and he provides the sheep for what they need for life. And ultimately to the point that he'd be willing to die for them. You know, it's not really a flattering thing when God compares us to sheep. And what he's really saying is, guys, in and of yourselves, you will not survive very long in this world. There are wolves out there, spiritual wolves, that just want to devour you and take you in directions away from God and the source of life. There are so many ideas out there that want to distract you and pull you away from true provision. And you might think that you're surviving. You might think that you're getting through, but God would say, you're actually not. On your own, by your own strength, by your own wisdom, by your own abilities, you're not surviving. And I can guarantee you, you do not have abundant life. You do not have the ability to give yourself abundant life. It's impossible. And so if you're on your own, Jesus would say, guys, you're not surviving. But if you come into my fold, if you come into my community, if you allow me to give you life, if you let me be your shepherd, then I'll provide for you. And here's how we can challenge that, how we can question that. What are you anxious about? What do you fear? Do you fear anything? Are you anxious about anything? Because what you got to understand is both fear and anxiety are declarations that saying, God, I don't trust you're my protector and my provider. God, I'm not convinced you're my shepherd who loves me, who would give his life for me, who's watching every moment, everything I'm going through. I tend to think, God, I think you're oblivious to me. I think you're focused in other ways, but you just don't see me. You don't know what I'm going through. And therefore, I need life. And so I need to strive, and I don't know if I can control it, and I start getting anxious. Do I have provision? Will I have everything I need for life? God, can you protect me? And whenever we have those fears and anxieties, which often over time leads to depression, it's because we actually don't believe that we have a shepherd who deeply, deeply loves us and sees us and has every provision already in place. All we have to do is follow his lead. He'll protect us from any threat that comes our way. And so really, the claim of Jesus here is provision and protection. Jesus' claim is, I'll protect you. I'll watch over you. I'll provide for you. Jesus goes on in John chapter 11, and he had just had a good friend by the name of Lazarus who had died. And Lazarus' sisters, Mary and Martha, had called Jesus, "Jesus, Lazarus is sick. Would you come and you heal him? You can heal him. We know you can. Would you just come?" And Jesus says, "Yeah, let's wait 4 days." And meanwhile, while he's waiting those 4 days, Lazarus dies, and then Jesus shows up. You can imagine Mary and Martha's response. They weren't overly impressed with Jesus. When Jesus was entering into the town, Martha went out to meet him. Mary wouldn't. She wouldn't go to see him. She was so mad and hurt and wounded that Jesus would not prioritize their brother's life. But Jesus held off for a reason, is because he wanted to convey a deeply important truth about himself. Get this? He was willing to let a friend die and be buried for 4 days so that we could understand something about Jesus that was more important than that. And so Jesus came and he says this. Martha is saying, "Jesus, I know in the resurrection we'll see Lazarus again." And she's going, "Martha, you just don't get it. I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me, even if he dies, will live. Everyone who lives and believes in me will never die." And then he asks this question: "Do you believe this?" And I just picture him peering intently into Martha's eyes. Do you believe this? Well, that Jesus is the resurrection. Jesus is the life. In other words, there is nothing is a threat to life with Jesus. Death has no sting with Jesus. Death has no finality with Jesus. And even if you should physically die, what's that got to do with anything? Because the life that Jesus gives raises you to life for eternity. How are you feeling about Jesus' words? Can Jesus just be a simple, nice teacher and say these words? See, it's not really comfortable. He's forcing us through these words to draw this line and to say, what am I going to believe about him? Next passage, John 15. He goes on and says, "I am the vine. I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. Every branch in me that does not produce fruit, he removes, and he prunes every branch that does produce fruit, so that it'll produce even more fruit." I had Keith go and steal a grapevine from his backyard this morning. And so the vine is actually a very thick branch that comes right down from the ground. It comes up, and then all these branches come off of it, and the branches bear the fruit. And what Jesus is saying is the vine is what the source of life flows through the vine to all the branches. But if the branch is somehow disconnected from the vine or isn't letting the life of the vine flow through it, then the branch eventually withers and dies, or it doesn't produce very much fruit. And so Jesus just says, well, might as well cut that branch off. But if the branch is connected to the vine, then it does flow through, and you can have an abundance of fruit, abundance of grapes. And Jesus says, this is what it's like when someone's attached to me and allowing my life to flow in and through them, is you will produce much spiritual fruit, an abundance of fruit. And it's actually the Father's will to produce fruit. And so the Father might say, hey, you're doing a good job so far. You're doing okay, but we can actually produce even more fruit. Wouldn't that be awesome? Wouldn't you love your life to be producing more effectiveness, more fruitfulness? Who doesn't want their life to be more effective and more fruitful? Just Kyle. We'll let him sit off in his mediocrity. But the rest of us would like to produce more and more fruit, to know that my life means something. It counts for something. It's significant. It's important within God's big overall picture. And so Jesus says, you actually don't have to work harder to produce more fruit. Does the branch actually have to work harder to produce more fruit? No. All the branch has to do is be unhinderedly attached to the vine. And the vine and the source of life through the vine produces the fruit. Sometimes I think we can look at ourselves saying, oh, I just need to accomplish more. I need to do more significant things. And Jesus is saying, actually, no, you don't. What you do need to do is just be more connected to me, more focused on me. Let your life center on me, and I will produce fruit through you. But whenever you go and try and produce fruit and effectiveness and meaningfulness and significance all on your own, you're not attached to me. You've hindered what I want to do in and through you. You become distracted, misdirected. And as a result, you're actually not accomplishing too much in your life. I think sometimes we look at our lives and saying, man, what is the point of my life? What am I doing with my life? For all the years you've been here, how's this world been impacted? How have other people been impacted? How's this world changed? And I look at it saying, not very much. I'm just trying to get through. If you're just trying to get through and survive, then I guarantee you're not well connected to Jesus. Because when you're well connected to Jesus, you're not worrying about getting through and surviving. You're just saying, hey, Jesus, whatever you want to do with my life, let's do it together. And Jesus says, great, let me do it through you. And Jesus then bears fruit. Suddenly what happens is we start going through life and we look back and saying, well, God's actually been doing some really cool things in and through me. And it's not because you've worked harder and you've been a better Christian. It's just because you've decided, I'm going to make this year a life that's more focused on Jesus and just walking with him as opposed to surviving. I'm going to give up surviving, and I'm just going to try and be faithful. I'm going to stop trying to protect myself, and I'm just going to be faithful. Jesus, yeah, maybe this is even terrifying, but hey, if you're calling me to, I will be faithful. I don't need to survive. I refused to survive. I die to myself. I say, Jesus, here's my life. Do with it whatever you want. And when we do that, then interesting enough, we'll start that we are now bearing some fruit. Because if Jesus is in control, flowing through us, he's going to bear the fruit. And then the Father will do a little bit of pruning here and there, cutting off the stuff that's hindering us, and so we can produce more fruit. And so really what the claim here is of Jesus is that I am the source of life effectiveness. Your life will not be effective. Your life will not bear fruit. I am the source of life effectiveness, if you follow me. And then finally, John 14:6. This is really an intolerant statement, one of the most intolerant statements Jesus made. And again, you have to figure out, what am I doing with this? He says, I am the way. I am the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you know me, you'll also know my Father. From now on, you do know him and you've seen him, because Jesus and the Father are one. You see Jesus, you've seen the Father. And what Jesus is saying, so therefore then, if you want to get to the Father, it's got to be to me, because I and the Father, we're one. And so, how do you get through the Father except through going through Jesus, who's the Father? You can't get to the Father apart from Jesus, because Jesus is the visible representation of the Father in this world. He is the image of the Father in this world. And so what Jesus is saying is, guys, there is no other pathway to heaven apart from the one that the Father has created. Because the pathway that the Father has created had to deal with specific issues. It's just not, let's create a path. No, there were barriers that had to be overcome. The barrier of my sinful actions that demand the death penalty. The barrier of my sin nature that separates me from a holy God. My sins need to be paid for with the death penalty somehow, and my nature needed to be removed and given a new nature that was holy, which is only possible through the Spirit of Christ, which is the Holy Spirit coming into my life, the Spirit of holiness giving me holiness so I could be in a relationship with God again. Holiness and holiness together. Only if I'm made holy by Jesus. So when Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, no one comes to the Father except through me. Just in this one statement, Jesus has drawn a line. It says, now, what do you think of me? Who do you say that I am? What do you believe about me? Which side of the line are you going to step on? Are you going to be on the side that says, Jesus, hey, maybe you're a cool guy, you did some cool things, you had some really good moral teachings, but I'm just going to leave you in that camp? Or are you going to say, no, he was actually who he claimed to be? Either he was a deceiver saying, follow me for eternal life, and he couldn't deliver, or he is God in the flesh, and he can deliver. Jesus doesn't give us any other options. And so, again, I want you to go through and look at each of those 7 areas. Which one have you been struggling with the most in this past week, past month, past season of your life? Which one have you been struggling to trust about Jesus? What's that? Oh, the claim for the way, well, the claim is everything. How much more do you add to, I'm the way, I'm the truth, I'm the life? Everything. Which one do you struggle with the most? Do you struggle with the idea that Jesus can quench your hunger for life, your thirst for life? Do you struggle with the idea that of struggling to know how to get through the darkness of this world, and you're constantly stumbling and messing up? Are you struggling to feel that you're part of the family of God and that he's going to give you full, abundant life? How's that going for you? Are you struggling with the fact that he's your protector and provider as a shepherd? He sees every need you're ever going to encounter, and he's already prepared for it. And all you have to do is seek him first, and he'll take care of all the details. Are you struggling to trust that Jesus is life, the source of life? Do you fear death? Do you fear things crashing around you? Do you fear things crumbling around you? Do you struggle with the fear of survival? Am I going to make it through to the end? Or is Jesus the resurrection and the life, and he can give you life right now? He can give you full, abundant life right now, regardless of what your circumstances, regardless of what your relationships are like, regardless of what your job's like. He can give you full, abundant life right now so that you can then go into those chaotic situations with life, and you can now be a hope and a solution to others. Or you can just go into all those same problems desperate and thirsty and hungry and lost and blind. And do you see how much Jesus wants to do for you right now? And I can guarantee every single one of us is struggling with one of these areas with Jesus. And that probably this week we need to camp out on one of them. Which one is it going to be for you? Which one are you really struggling with? Probably the one that I struggle with, just give you some openness and transparency. I have been struggling for a while with the idea that Jesus is the vine. Sometimes I even look at church planting and growth and reaching out and effectiveness and people coming to faith and saying, oh, do I just need to work harder? Do I just need to come up with a better approach, a better outreach? Do I just need... No, that's not my job. My job is to be attached to Jesus, and then whatever he wants to accomplish, he'll do through us. And chances are, if I can just cling to Jesus as the vine, me as the branch and him as the vine, it doesn't matter what happens with the church. That's his problem. I just want to be faithful to do whatever he wants to do in and through me so that he produces the fruit. Not me producing fruit, not Russell producing fruit, not you guys producing fruit. Jesus produces the fruit through our faithfulness, not through our hard work. Now, we will want to do hard work when he calls us to do hard work, but it's his leading, his directing, not our own. And we're going to go a little bit deeper on this next week. We're going to tackle the whole issue of the resurrection. Because what's the proof that Jesus was who he claimed to be? Well, the resurrection is going to be the proof. And so what we want to do is we want to tackle the issue of the resurrection, the challenges of the resurrection, and go from there. Why don't I just pray? Father, I still struggle in so many of these areas fully trusting you. God, we all do. Every single one of us struggles with these declarations of Jesus personally somehow in our life. And as a result, it creates a barrier to us bearing fruit and bearing us to having joy and peace. And Lord, I just want to thank you that you don't give up on us, that you're willing to persevere with us. And so, Father, thank you. Thank you even for today, just revealing who you are. In Jesus' name, amen.